Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Keeping Carl's Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's a summer podcast, but we're already looking at the NHL schedule. It is episode 1 or episode 0 maybe of the Matchup Maximizer. It's a podcast we do every week where we look at the upcoming week's NHL schedule in order to maximize our chances of winning these head-to-head matchups by finding teams with good schedules. But you're thinking, okay, it's a little early, but the NHL schedule has dropped, and I've got regular host of Matchup Maximizer when I'm not around. Jeremy is here, and we're going to take a look at the schedule as a whole and discuss some takeaways. Jeremy, thanks for coming to join me here on a hot July day.
It's great to be here. I have been looking at hockey stuff all July, which is kind of weird. I actually am quitting fantasy baseball after this year so I can spend more time doing hockey stuff in the summer.
Good call.
Bit of an obsession of mine.
Yeah. Did something trigger you to decide that you're done with baseball? Is there something specific about this season of fantasy baseball that you're not having as much fun?
Too many years of being a Mariners fan, maybe?
Oh, are they not? I really am. I know the Blue Jays are, but I went to a Blue Jays game on about a month ago against the Yankees, and it was such the Blue Jays got destroyed. I remember it was a couple batters in, and this guy Judge went up, and then everyone was booing, and I was like, oh, why is everyone booing? I was like, oh, he's the Judge. He's a good player, so everyone boos him. It was like, oh, okay, and then literally the next second he hit a 2-run homer, and that started the game. And but anyways, yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah, baseball's dumb. Hockey's the best, and I'm really stoked to look at the schedule because this is an important thing to know. I guess maybe it's not that important for right now, but definitely once you get into your fantasy drafts, you want to have a sense of the schedule, and we'll talk about sort of maybe strategies you take into your drafts in order to take advantage of knowledge of what's going on in the schedule. So we've got it in front of us, and we've got some notes here, so I guess we can kind of go back and forth. But I guess the two kind of key things that I think we all kind of look towards when the schedule gets dropped are light days and back-to-backs. So maybe we can start with light days. So for those uninitiated, for those new to playing a head-to-head fantasy league, or maybe new to the podcast, you didn't realize you could have been gaming it like this. There's most fantasy teams, you have your main roster and then you have your bench. And so on a busy day, those crazy days where 28 teams are playing or something, oftentimes you have to make a sit-start decision where you have players on your bench and you don't have room for them in your main roster and you have to decide whether to sit one or play one. And if you're in just a weekly league where the most points at the end wins, obviously having more games is going to help you get more points. And if you have a player, let's say, playing Friday, Sunday, that player is going to fit into your roster for sure both of those days, as opposed to if that same player is playing Thursday, Saturday, and you're already full on those days, you were going to have to bench him. So that's potentially 2 extra games. So there's a big advantage to having players on teams that have light days, just so that you'll maximize your number of game plays. So that's the general idea behind light days. So Jeremy, taking a look at the schedule, what are your first takeaways in terms of which teams have good and bad light day schedules?
When I'm looking at late days, I'm always interested in the high-end players from those teams because, like you said, the way they fit into your roster, if you're getting fringe guys with lots of light days, that's great, but you're probably dropping those guys anyway. So looking at the schedule, Colorado, Winnipeg, Vegas, and Toronto jump out to me, and the New York Rangers as teams with lots of guys you're going to draft in the first 5 rounds of your draft, and also a lot of light days. Think if you can get start your team with Mikko Rantanen and Mika Zibanejad, and all of a sudden those two have a third of their games, close to half for the Rangers even, on off nights. Then when you're looking at your roster on a busy Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday later in the season, those guys are on your bench because they already played their games on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then you've got more room for more flexibility for streamers or for your fringier guys that maybe you'd cut if you couldn't fit them into your roster. Off nights to me are one of the most important things going into the draft, actually, other than, how good the player is to begin with.
So I'd be curious to know, as someone who, by the way, I should mention, Jeremy, going into tier 1 of the Cupful next season. So this is not just some schmo we pulled off the street. This is one of the best fantasy players out there. And obviously you've heard Jeremy a lot on short shifts over the past couple of years. But yeah, so how much do you weigh? Let's say if you're looking at, okay, you have ninth overall pick. Well, you're going to be doing an auction draft, but let's say last year you had ninth overall pick. You're looking at Rantanen, or you're looking. Let me find a team with like a low number of light days that has a star player. Okay, I see Tampa Bay. Okay, let's say you're looking at Rantanen or like Kucherov. Are you like, I think a lot of people have Kucherov ranked ahead of Rantanen if you're just going by straight up expected points per game. But I'm seeing, just looking at the number of light days between the start of the season and the start of where we expect the fantasy playoffs to start, I'm seeing 16 light days for Tampa and 29 for Colorado. So yeah, almost double. Is that enough to push someone like a Rantanen over Kucherov, or is this more like just if it's like really close and you're just trying to break a tie?
It's funny that you use those two as an example, because I actually had that exact decision to make at the 8th overall pick last year, and I went with Rantanen.
And you won.
Yeah, I did well. One thing you kind of find when you take a look at the schedule multiple years, it's the same teams over and over again with really good versus really bad off-night schedules. Colorado, Chicago, Anaheim. For some reason, it's the West Coast teams. I wonder if that has to do with TV scheduling and stuff. Often have some of the highest late day schedules, and teams like Tampa Bay almost always is one of the lowest. I'm not sure exactly what goes into that, but it's kind of something you get used to. And I see it. I think it's probably more of a tiebreaker, but I do go into the draft wanting one or two of my first 5 picks to be guys that I know I can slot in on off nights.
Right. Yeah. I guess the flip side is if you're looking at teams without like maybe that star player, that's where, I don't know, I felt like I got a little burned last year because I was like also thinking a lot about light days and thinking it would be so sweet to have like a couple of these guys. And like Anaheim is always the best. And they once again, Anaheim has the most light days this season. Like as always, no surprise. But like, it's like, who do you, the problem is Anaheim doesn't have any studs. And last year I recall, I think I reached a bit too much for Troy Terry. And then if people recall, like I didn't take him like in like the second round or anything, but it was like 9th or 10th round, but there were like a lot. I recall specifically I took Troy Terry over Joel Eriksson Ek, and I have a feeling I would have obviously I wasn't predicting that Ek was going to have the season he ended up having, but I think I had Ek higher, and I like used the tie break though and decided to go Terry for the schedule, and it was like a very regrettable choice, especially with how terrible Troy Terry was at the start of the year. He totally underperformed, and I was like, I could have just had Joel Eriksson Ek. He was so good. Maybe I worried too much about it. So I think, yeah, you don't want to. Like this episode's going to be all about the schedule, so we're going to make it seem like a really big deal because that's the theme of the episode. But just keep in mind that at the end of the day, like Jeremy said, if it's a player that's going to end up potentially being fringe on your roster, then obviously that doesn't make it count as much. But obviously, like there are some interesting players. Like I'll just bring up on Anaheim. I don't even know at this point who is the top pick. Like I think a couple years ago it would have been obviously Trevor Zegras. I don't think that's the case anymore. But maybe last season it was Troy Terry as like your top guy you want on Anaheim. Now going into this year, is it Mason McTavish? I could imagine he's someone who a lot of people are expecting to have a bit of a breakout. Leo Carlson, super high. Like they have all these like young guys. Even like Cutter Gauthier is going to is expected to play this season, and he could be a Calder candidate. Just out of curiosity. And I mean, I guess I haven't even gone to the defense. Maybe like Mintyukov or someone. But like, who's your top duck at this point going off the board if you want to take advantage of their great light day schedule?
It's actually a guy you haven't named yet, Frank Vatrano.
Okay. Vatrano, of course, right. He was going for shots.
I don't think Vatrano's going to do what he did last year. Like, if anything, I think there's a chance that he regresses back towards like high-end streamer territory, as he's usually been one of those guys who's either the last guy on your roster or a guy that flips back and forth to the waiver wire among a bunch of teams. But what he did last year looked semi-sustainable, and it's worth a chance. But again, I don't think I'm drafting any duck for the schedule because I just don't know if they're going to be on my roster come December or January.
Right. Okay. Utah, by the way, is another team with a lot of light days. So that might be a reason to bump up Clayton Keller. Like obviously we could just go through every team and like tell you their top player, but you can check out. I've made a spreadsheet that I use for myself, even though there's better sources out there. But I like my keepingcarlson.com/tools. I have a little schedule spreadsheet. You can make a copy and play around with it. There's tools that like Frozen Tools has a really good schedule tool. So find your schedule tool of choice, but definitely take a look before your drafts to find out. And also I like to look at it in a couple of time ranges. Like you can look at the whole season. I feel like that's not that useful. For me, I'm very focused, especially for Cupful, keeping Carlson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Registration is still open. After the last couple seasons I've had, I'm really just focused on getting into the playoffs. So I don't care about how many light days someone has in the playoffs. If I get to the playoffs, I'll be stoked. And last year I had the same thought and I ended up not making the playoffs, but I did make the consolation playoffs. And hey, by the way, Jeremy, I'm a winner too. I won my consolation playoffs. So we both were there at the end of the final week of the fantasy season, raising our hands in victory. So one time span is I like to just look at so the season starts October 4th. So I just look at October 4th to March 16th. That'll give you the time span up until what I'm expecting to be the end of the regular season. After March 16th, then there's still 3 regular weeks. And then after that, there's still a week and a half of games that for a couple, we'd always not include that last week and a bit because that's when teams start benching players. Another time span that I think is interesting is just the first month or so. Just because you want to get off to a strong start, and sometimes you can get a player that's doing well, and then maybe you trade them. You kind of reassess. I kind of like the idea of just getting off to a good start and then figuring out from there. So if we look October 4th to say November 10th, so that's about 4 matchups. If I'm looking at the most light days there, you know what? It ends up being kind of the similar team. Like Anaheim's at the top there. Then you've got the Devils, and you've got the Penguins and the Jets. So that could be a reason to maybe bump up your Jack Hughes, Sidney Crosby. Again, I'm just telling you the top players on each team. I don't know, Kyle Connor. But those will be guys that will be getting you a lot of extra games early on, help you maximize those first few weeks. And then you can kind of reassess from there a little bit, make trades. I don't know, depending how you want to play. So, okay, that's off days. And I guess I should say the bottom ones. The worst team in the first month, I'm just looking at it now, Dallas Stars, only 2 light days in that stretch of October 4th to November 10th. So, not to say that you shouldn't take your Jason Robertson or your Wyatt Johnston or whoever, but yeah, you're going to have a little bit less flexibility. But, again, like Jeremy said, you don't need to have all off day guys, but just keep in mind maybe if you already have a couple Tampa guys and you're taking a Dallas guy, you might want to start thinking about maybe grabbing your next pick being from the Rangers or Colorado or something, just to kind of give yourself that extra flexibility if you want to play that really intense, in the margins game, which if you're in a very competitive league, that can make a difference.
With regards to the first month or so, I actually like to use that to pick, medium-term streamers in the sense that New Jersey jumps out to me as a team that they play 18 games over the first 5 weeks. That is almost a guaranteed 4 games a week. I think they're at 15 games over the first 4 weeks of the season also. That can be really nice if, you're 10th through 14th round pick, if someone's sitting there who maybe is an upside shot like Luke Hughes, or one of the wingers on the second or third line is Blake Coleman there?
No, he's on Calgary. But I know it's tough because New Jersey has all these high-end guys that are going to go early, right? It's not like Timo Meier, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier. They'll obviously all be gone. So yeah, Luke Hughes will probably also be gone. Dougie Hamilton. Maybe that's the place where you take a Simon Nemec if he's going to make the team. I'm trying to find who's a middling New Jersey guy, but it looks like it's really studs or duds here for fantasy. I'm not going to recommend getting Andre Palat or Tomasz Tatar. Oh, you know who's a good? Okay, I got it. I got the name. It's obvious. Dawson Mercer. He's a middle, he has some upside, but also you're worried he's not going to go too high because who knows where he fits in the top 6. But that could be someone that you grab a little bit higher when you're in the middle of your draft, just because you're going to, even if you're planning on dropping him after a month, like you said, you're getting almost 4 games a week for those first few weeks. So I guess he's the one that stands out to me.
I'd actually put Palat in the same category just because there's a good chance Palat ends up in the top 6, at least until he gets hurt like he usually does. Another random New Jersey guy that's catching my eye on Puckpedia is Nathan Bastian. If you're in a bangers league, guy who's going to play 6 minutes a night and get you 10 hits a game, that kind of silly gaming of it. And, the short-term streamers are good value in a league like Cupful where you only, quotes, have 4 moves per week. I play in another league where I get even more streams a week. So my streamers are 3 days from this guy, a week from this guy. In Cupful, it's kind of nice to look a bit ahead and have, someone who's going to be on your roster for 4 weeks. And even if they're only getting you 3 cupful points a game, if that's 12 points a week, that's pretty decent.
By the way, Trev asks a good question here in the chat. What are you guys using as the threshold for what's considered a light day or a heavy day? So yeah, again, like with my spreadsheet I made at keepingcarlson.com/tools, I have it set currently for these numbers I've been giving at 18 teams playing. So if there's more than 18, I'm considering it heavy. But yeah, I guess it depends on your league and how many bench spots you have. I find like around 18 is where if it's higher, then there's a good chance that you might have to bench someone. In my experience, like a couple, but definitely if you're like a 20 or even 22 teams playing that day, there's a chance that you might be able to fit everyone. Just again, it depending also on how many of these light day players you happen to have on your team. Another thing, by the way, when you're looking at just the start of the season, I like to look at just like the first couple of matchups, even just to see for like this is like the last. Like I think like the last pick of your draft should just be like think of it as like your first streamer, you know. And so, for example, if you're at the last pick of your draft and you're thinking, oh, I'm really interested in. Trying to think of someone like from Washington that's like would fall all the way to the end there. Connor McMichael. Like I have a hunch that this is going to be the year that Connor McMichael breaks out. Like you might want to think twice just because Washington. Okay, so by the way, we should just say the schedule starts on October 4th, which is a Friday. On Friday and Saturday, there's just New Jersey and Buffalo playing each other twice, and that's this like European series. So then after that, there's no games for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then we have like a regular week starting on the Tuesday. Just to finish my thought on Washington, Washington doesn't play all the way until the Saturday. So same as Anaheim, by the way, also doesn't play until the Saturday. But at least Anaheim plays Saturday, Sunday. Washington literally gives you one game for that first matchup, and it's not until the Saturday. So I feel like, no, don't grab Connor McMichael with your last pick of your draft. If anything, just like let him, if you're really thinking you have 100, wait till Thursday or something, and grab him then. But in the meantime, grab New Jersey or a Buffalo guy, get those 2 early games. Or if not them, then get someone playing like a Tuesday, Thursday to start the week, like the next week, like Florida or St. Louis. I think that's just like kind of some strategy. So yeah, it's good to keep in mind when you go into your draft, like how those first couple of weeks are going to look.
Yeah, you say last pick of your draft. I often do last 2 or 3 picks of my draft, looking purely at week 1. New Jersey and Buffalo are great targets with the intention of playing them for 2 games and then dropping them for someone who plays 3 games the following week. Another team
Tier 1 competitors, watch out for Andre Palat. That's Jeremy's in the auction. He's going to go for $5.
There's a good chance I end up with him in the auction. Yeah, that's very true. Another team that I've also kind of got my eye on for the first week is St. Louis, because St. Louis plays Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which means they avoid the busy Saturday, are done early in the week, and 2 of their games are San Jose and Seattle, which are reasonable opponents. Although I don't think St. Louis is going to be that good, but San Jose is going to be worse, and Seattle may be about the same. So then you could get a St. Louis guy with one of your last draft picks and then target someone on the waiver wire that plays Saturday, Sunday, or if you're well ahead, you can start looking for the next week.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously he's always injured, but maybe like if Torrey Krug is falling far enough, you could fill a D spot like with that last pick. Or I'm trying to think of the forward. Oh, Braden Shen maybe is like, at this point, I would imagine people aren't too into him, so he can be a good guy, depending on how deep your league is. Brandon Saad, if it's in a deeper league, maybe is, that St. Louis person right at the end. Yeah, another couple good schedules, I guess, are Vegas and Winnipeg for that first week, because they play Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, so you'll get all those 3 games, all 3 light days. So those are a couple other teams to look at. But yeah, New Jersey, Buffalo would be just the smartest, because then you get those 2 games and then you can start using your moves after that. We already talked about New Jersey. With Buffalo, they just that's a really fun team in terms of like they have so many young, exciting players. Like, who knows where they're going to get taken? Like a lot of these players, I think people you might not want to drop. Like if you draft Jack Quinn or obviously like Paterka, but like like all of these like kind of young up and coming players, it's almost like might be too early to just drop them, especially if they have a good couple of games. I'm trying to think of like, is there a Sabres player that you would had just for those games and then drop? Like if I'm looking through the lineup here, like maybe Jason Zucker comes to mind. They signed him to a 1-year contract. I don't think he's going to be someone you're going to need to hold all season. But yeah, if you're drafting, Tage, Cousins, Tuck, you're obviously holding, and then Zach Benson. I think if you draft him, you might as well hold him, see how it goes. But maybe if you draft Benson, then after those 2 games, maybe you could always let him go, depending on how you see deployment going and everything. But we'll talk more about that as we get into the actual season. It is the middle of July here, so we're just kind of looking at the schedule. Okay, so that's light days. Jeremy, anything else from you about light days, or do you want to get into some back-to-backs, which is the other kind of key consideration people look at when they're looking at the schedule?
Let's get into back-to-backs. I'm actually kind of curious what your thoughts on those are, because that's actually something I don't consider at all come draft time. I know it's somewhat important for goalies, but I kind of think that teams are going to do their thing no matter what with goalies, and the 55 to 60 start guys are going to get 55 to 60 starts, and the timeshare guys are going to be timeshare regardless of the number of back-to-backs. And as far as I know, there's no research on back-to-backs affecting skater performance, although if there is, I'd love to read it, because that's something I've always wondered.
Yeah, I've never seen anything about that either. Yeah, I always just think of it in terms of goalies. But you're right, that maybe it doesn't make that big of an impact. Like I'm looking at the schedule from the start to the end of the fantasy regular season, not including the playoffs. I'm seeing Pittsburgh has the most back-to-backs with 13, and Winnipeg has the fewest with 7. So I guess, what does that tell you? Like generally in hockey, like the backup goalie is going to play one of those games. So like when you see Pittsburgh having 13 back-to-backs, that's a good sign that Alex Nedeljkovic, even if he's the backup, though who knows, like he might just challenge Jari, they might end up being 50-50. So maybe that's like an example where it doesn't really matter, but there's clearly, at least 13 games for Nedeljkovic to get in there. And then, so it's like maybe if you're in a super deep league and you're trying to, like all these like backup goalies are even being taken, maybe you're moving Nedeljkovic up the list. And Winnipeg, I mean, it's always the case anyways, but just all the more reason for them to just, they can just burn Hellebuck to the ground, because there's not that many back-to-backs where they're going to put in, I guess it's Eric Comrie or Kaapo Kakkonen. Brian and I had a very riveting discussion on the last episode trying to decide who's going to win that backup job, the least important goalie job maybe in the NHL, the backup on Winnipeg. Other teams with a lot of back-to-backs, I see like, I'm trying to find like a team where there's going to be an impact. You're right. There might not just not be an impact. Like Edmonton has 12, which is right up there. So, maybe like Calvin Pickard is someone who, and because when he plays, like Edmonton scores so many goals, you might be able to get something. But again, this might be the kind of thing where you're not really worrying about it at the draft anyways, because you're not drafting Calvin Pickard, right? He's just a streamer. So you could just kind of keep him in mind. So yeah, now that I look through it, you could look at it yourself as a listener and see, like, again, I have this all that data in that spreadsheet I made, but maybe it doesn't really matter. Like, I see St. Louis doesn't have that many. They're the next fewest after Winnipeg, but like, I think Joel Hofer is going to just earn a bunch of starts because he's good. So I like, you could be like, well, that makes Hofer less interesting because Binnington's the starter, but I could see that being closer to 50-50 anyways. I think a lot of teams in the NHL are now just like realizing it's probably not a bad strategy. If you have a second decent goalie, give your primary goalie a bit more rest. It might just be better for your team. And plus also then your goalie's ready to go for the playoffs, a la the Boston Bruins. So yeah, maybe St. Louis, like regardless, is just going to kind of alternate. So we'll have to see. So you're right. Maybe I don't have, unless you have something, I think I'm good for the back-to-backs also.
One minor thing to look at is back-to-backs during playoff weeks, because that's just so compressed. For example, I see that the Florida Panthers play 3 back-to-back games during our 3 playoff weeks and only play 9 games total. Therefore, Sergei Bobrovsky is only getting you 2 starts a week during that stretch. And just little things like that. I don't think any of the other playoff back-to-backs, the teams with 3 back-to-backs during playoffs are Buffalo, who plays 11 games anyway, Columbus, and who knows what their goalie situation is, Florida, and Vegas, where Vegas also may be kind of one of those all over the place goalie situations.
Yeah, though, I mean, with Thompson gone, like, I think Aiden Hill, it's Hill and Samsonov going into the season. And I do see Hill as, like, the starter there. Though I guess Samsonov could always still be a reclamation project. I guess Aiden Hill was once a reclamation project. And now I think of him as, like, kind of an established starter. But I guess I kind of feel the same about Samsonov now. I have to remind myself, as I did about Hill, like, a couple of years ago. So, yeah, that's a good point that maybe that does, like, bring Aiden Hill's draft stock down. If you're like someone like Jeremy who's expecting to go to the playoffs, you're not even worried about it, you're for sure going to make it, it's just a matter of like maximizing, then yeah, maybe Hill will get you fewer starts when you need him most. So maybe you grab another goalie ahead of him if you're between a couple. But yeah, I guess speaking of the playoffs, yeah, so like I said, I don't really look at it. I just kind of let future Elan worry about that. I'm just going to try to get there. But I know you like to think about the playoffs. And also, I'm talking about the cupful, where it's a very competitive league. In your home leagues, maybe it's a lot easier. And also, there's a lot of people who are in leagues where like just the top 8. It's like 12-team league and like 8 make the playoffs. So, you're very likely to make it unless you're really terrible. So it is important to take a look at that playoff schedule. So who's jumping out at you as having a favorable or not so favorable schedule in that critical time?
Part of the reason I like targeting playoffs is that often what happens is teams are going to play the same amount of games. Obviously, they all play 82 during the season. Maybe it's, 79 during the fantasy season. And at the cost of one game over the first 21 weeks, you have one extra game during the playoff weeks. And so I kind of feel that the value of that game being pushed to the playoff week is a bit more. And
Right.
also, I'm very much, if I'm going to make playoffs and have a team that's not set up for it, is there really a difference between 6th and 7th? I guess there kind of is in Cupful where it affects your relegation, but in a lot of leagues, missing playoffs and losing in the first round gets you the same result. So you might as well kind of min-max it and go for the best possible outcome.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I think it is possible. Like, I don't want to, I guess the thing that I want to do is like, this is the matchup maximizer. We're looking at the schedule. At the same time, I do want to like, not like overemphasize, like it's important and it could play a factor, but like if you make it everything, you could end up like missing the forest for the trees is the saying. Like, you still want to have like a good team with good players. But yeah, I hear you. So who are some players that maybe you're moving up a slot or two based on their playoff schedules? Or like, what are the teams that jump out to you?
My 2 biggest movers based on playoff schedules, both come in the first round, and one is Brady to Chuck. Ottawa plays 11 games during playoffs, while most teams play either 9 or 10. And Brady's already a, top 10 pick. Maybe that's enough to bump him from, 8 to 7 or 7 to 6. I haven't really done my full rankings yet.
Mm-hmm. And Stützle also way up there. Like, obviously a level below Brady, but maybe like 3rd round type of player.
It does make me want to buy in a bit more on Stützle and, early 3rd, late 2nd rounds type of guy. Another thing that I noticed this year, which is kind of nice, I think last year Edmonton had a like cracked playoff schedule, and it was kind of like, oh, that's just more advantages for the first 2 picks to get McDavid and Dry, and then all of a sudden get 11 games with 7 off nights. This year it's a lot more balanced. The usual suspects for top 5 picks or top 7 picks, Edmonton, Colorado, Toronto, even Boston and Florida. Nobody's playing 11 games or having a crazy off night schedule. So I think at that point if you have got a top 5 pick, you're picking the player you like best. While last year I would have been like schedule. One other player that I think deserves a bit more love because of his playoff schedule is Kirill Kaprizov. Minnesota plays 11 games and 7 of them are on late days during playoffs. That could be a really nice get in the mid to late first round. I'm not even sure where he's going this year.
Well, okay, let's go back to our original discussion. Let's say you had, again, 7th, 8th pick. You're looking at Rantanen. Let's say Kucherov's gone. It's not even a consideration now. You got Rantanen and Kaprizov could easily be out there. Are you focusing more on the person with more light day games during the regular season, or are you going to go with the playoff benefits of getting a Kaprizov?
I'd have to look a bit closer at where they project out for this year, because I know, what was it? Was it 2 years ago or was it last year that Rantanen scored 50 goals? And that's kind of a really, really nice number to have.
Kaprizov, I think, shoots a lot more. I don't know. I think all else equal, my gut now, and again, I haven't like done like a full rankings yet or like gone into all the projections. My way I like to prepare for the season is like to get a whole bunch of different projections and then start like, I don't know, like downloading the hive mind like into my brain of getting the vibes on everyone. But my gut right now is I'd have Kaprizov higher, all else equal. But let's say they were equal. I'm just curious for your general, like, as you're weighing the different pros and cons of people, are you weighing more like a stronger regular season or a stronger playoffs? It sounds like you were saying you might weigh the stronger playoffs because you're just saying, if I make the playoffs, what's the point? If I don't have a team that could win it?
Yeah, if they are like dead even on the sheet or right next to each other, absolutely, I'm going Kaprizov. Honestly, for me, the question becomes, how many spots does he jump? Is it worth, 0.2 cupful points per game? Is it worth 0.4 cupful points a game? Like, how much of a difference in the projection am I willing to sacrifice for the better playoff schedule? That's kind of something I decide for the first round, at least. I'll decide it before my drafts. I'll be like, hey, this is my top 20 guys in order. And when it becomes my turn, I'm just picking the top guy on the list and not thinking about it.
Right.
Having to prepare for the auction I have no clue this year. I'm going to be cramming my preparation for the auction into 3 days, so that you could get some entertaining picks for me. I hope I provide some good entertainment value this year.
It's always fun to be on the outside watching the auction, a lot less stressful for sure. I did it, I won the couple with an auction draft a couple years back, or I guess 3 years back now. And then I tried to use my same strategy the next year and it really blew up in my face. I think that, this is a whole other discussion, but the strategy of the auction is really I think you have to really be good at adapting. I think I had a strategy the first season and it worked. And kind of all the players who I was trying to get for a certain amount of money, I ended up getting for the money that I wanted. And so it was kind of just and so I sort of went in the second time with the same plan. And then all of a sudden players were going for a lot more than I was expecting. And I was of the mindset in that case, good, I'll get discounts later on. But then it just kept happening. And then all of a sudden all the good players were gone. And I was oh wait, I don't have any good players. And so you have to be really good at following that. But I guess it'll be fun to hear you talk on Stream Scheme after you're done your auction about your experience. So babies, but back to those playoff targets, who were on the flip side? Who are the players maybe you want to put down a little bit because they have bad playoff schedules?
One that really jumps out to me, the New York Rangers only play 8 games during playoff week, and the Rangers have a lot of top 50 pick type star power. They've got Zibanejad, they've got Panarin, they've got Chris Kreider after this year, they've got Adam Fox, they've got Igor Shesterkin. All of those guys, honestly, those guys may all go in the first 3 rounds of your cupful draft, depending on how high people are on Kreider. And I honestly would be kind of avoiding almost all of them. And the one downside is I'm saying I'm avoiding them. It's not like you can play the flip side and be oh, well, if Jeremy's avoiding them, I'm just going to pick them 10 picks later than I normally would and laugh all the way to the bank because someone's going to pick them within the same couple picks of me. So it's kind of just where's your risk tolerance or your lack of playoff performance on those guys and how much do you fade them? There's a price I'd take all of them, but I have a feeling I will be lower than the consensus on the Rangers because of that.
It's interesting because the Rangers are a team that has a really great off-day schedule in the regular season. So if you're getting Panarin, and if you believe that Panarin can repeat what he did last year, which puts him as a top 7, 8, he's right in that conversation with a Kaprizov and a Rantanen, I would think, if you expect him to continue it into his 30s. And but I guess the cost of a really good light day schedule in the regular season is not the best playoff schedule. But hey, if you're really savvy and you're playing against people that aren't listening to this podcast, you could always draft Panarin, ride the good times in the regular season at your trade deadline, swap them for a player for, I don't know, Brady Tkachuk or someone, with a good playoff schedule. Then you get the best of both worlds if you could pull it off.
Definitely. I consider myself a pretty bad trader, so I do not go into a season relying on being able to make a trade. I do know some people who do that and are oh yeah, I'm going to take this guy for the first 8 weeks and then flip them. And somehow they get decent value every time. And I just don't have the time nor the personality to constantly be seeking out trades.
That's fair. I think the one... this is something I've had every year, an idea, and it always seems to turn out to be true that this would be a good idea, but I never actually do it. But I think that if you have a goalie that's a stud, you should trade that goalie. Let the goalie give you all the goodness during the regular season. And then it's Andrei Vasilevsky, I feel every year last year he was kind of like not even that great. Well, he came off an injury and he came like, so maybe that's a bad example for last season. But the year before, Andre Vasilevsky was obviously great all season and then just totally like pooped the bed a little bit in the playoffs and kind of hurt you more than he helped you in the games he played. So it's kind of like, I would rather just get, it's good to have a volume goalie in a league like a cupful because they're so rare and, on a week-to-week basis, you're going to get a lot of points from a goalie that plays a lot and does well. But I think then I would like trade them at the trade deadline for stud skaters and then hope to like stream in good goalies for the playoffs. I think that's a way to go. But anyways, I'm getting all over the place here. Sorry, you had another team you were going to say that has a weak playoff schedule?
Yeah, this one's more of just a tongue-in-cheek comment. The Sharks also only play 8 playoff games, but I'm not sure there's any guys I'm drafting particularly high from the Sharks. So, if you want to take shots on Macklin Celebrini or Mikhail Grenland was decent or Tyler Toffoli, you're not doing that in the first probably 10 rounds of your draft. So the cost benefit of that, you just do it. And if they happen to be really good and then have a crappy playoff schedule, maybe you just drop them for the 2-game week, or maybe they don't even last on your roster past November. So I don't think there's any consideration to take with the Sharks because of the playoff schedule, just because none of their guys have that much value.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We've been doing mock drafts over on the Discord. It'll be interesting when Kevin gives us our mock draft ADP. I wouldn't be like, I feel like the first overall pick that's going to come in and play in the NHL the next season always goes pretty high. Obviously, last year Bedard was going pretty high in drafts. Bedard is like, Celebrini isn't Bedard, of course, but Celebrini is still, like a lot of people are saying, a really super high end guy. Like he's going to be a star in the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if people would just be excited to get the shiny new thing and reach for Celebrini. So it is worth noting if you want to go for him, even if he does hit. It's not the best playoff schedule, but obviously it depends like on what round you're deciding to take that swing on him. If it's late enough, like Jeremy said, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, not to delve too far into draft talk, but I love Celebrini. I did an episode on Fantasy Hockey Life podcast with Victor, and I kind of said I think Celebrini's closer to Bedard than to the next ranked player of like the past 10 years, top 10 guys. Like he's not Bedard, but I think when we were talking, I had Celebrini and Jack Hughes as kind of like the tier below Bedard. And I do think Celebrini has that 100-point potential, but probably will take a few years to get there.
Well, especially on the Sharks.
Yeah. He's also got such a well-rounded game that he could also go the Nico Hischier route and kind of be like an all-around 70, 75-point guy. And just he's so good at everything that he's not pushing the 100-point offense mark because he gets tough matchups all day.
Interesting. Okay, so then that could diminish him a little bit. No shade on Nico Hischier, who's great in fantasy, but yet not someone you talk about in the same breath as obviously a McDavid or a Jack Hughes even. I don't know. Now I'm looking at all the recent first overall picks. I guess you have Celebrini over like a Lafreniere or a Slavkovsky, even though they had their big breakouts last year.
By quite a bit, personally. Yeah.
Oh,
I think what I'd have McDavid, Matthews, Bedard, obviously are the top 3. Dahlin is somewhere in there, but comparing forwards and defensemen is apples and oranges, especially that young, just because they take different amounts of time to learn and grow. So I don't even like pay attention to the defenseman that got picked, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that'll be fun. And I have a prospect draft coming up. I've been doing this Dynasty League draft I've been talking about with Brian, where we finished our pro draft, and we're going to start our prospect draft on Monday for all players who have been drafted and have played fewer than 100 games. I have 13th overall in the prospect draft, so I don't think I'm going to be getting Celebrini. I assume that Bedard and Celebrini will be long gone before it's my pick, but I've got a few targets. I don't want to mention any names here. I want to keep things close to the chest, but I'm hoping that one of the guys I like falls. Maybe I'll have to message you when it's my pick and just get your okay, since it sounds like you know about these prospects.
Yeah, there's with less than 100 games being the threshold, there's going to be a lot of good names on there. Like I did a draft like that a few years ago, and there were just some really interesting names that I'm like, oh, that guy's not eligible for the majors, the pro draft. He'd be like a 5th or 6th round pick given his age. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, one guy that jumped out to me, and so I apologize to my league mates because I know name dropping is kind of not cool during a draft. But like Dylan Genther, I think has played now like 98 games. It was like really like right up there.
Great,
it's like,
yeah.
But the thing is also, there's a strategy with these dynasty leagues because having a player who's minors eligible, and also this is a cap dynasty. So if you're both minors eligible and you're still like have a couple years left of your ELC, that's valuable because you can move him in and out of your pro roster. And also he's not taking up a lot of cap when he is in your pro roster. Someone like Genther, super highly ranked prospect for sure, but maybe you knock him down a little bit just because in those first couple of years, he's not going to give you as much bang for your buck as someone like, I don't know who's going, well, I won't name any more players. And this is a whole other topic now. It's supposed to be Matchup Maximizer, but I'm looking forward to discussing offline. Maybe we can get you on at some point. Maybe Brian and I are actually planning on doing a show at some point once we're done our dynasty draft, like talk about the decisions we made and the players we ended up with. So maybe now I'm excited to have you. I need someone there to like tell me if I made smart choices or not.
I'd be happy to be a peanut gallery and comment on dynasty picks. Like I love the prospect stuff.
We'll just go through all of our picks that we made, and for each one, you'll be like, "Ooh, I don't think I would have gone that way." I remember one time I had a guy, who was it, Scouch? I had like one of these big prospect guys. I think it was Will Scouch, and I told him about a trade I had made in my other dynasty league, and I got that response. He was like not impressed at all. I had traded for like. Pass to Jov. This is like a couple years ago. And I remember I was like, I forget even what the rest of the trade was, but I know I mentioned that I got Pass to Jov and he gave me that face of just like, I don't think he's very good. And I was like, what? No, come on. He was like, so far we haven't seen anything yet from Pass to Jov, but he hasn't gotten a real shot. So maybe next year. Good off-day schedule with Anaheim.
If I can brag about the prospect draft I did, I guess this was in 2021. Same rules, 100 games. My prospect picks were Robertson, Ottinger, Nils Lundqvist, Owen Power, Jordan Kyrou, Jake Sanderson. Like, I nailed the first half of that prospect draft.
Yeah, except for Lundqvist there.
Yeah, who's still sitting on my roster, and I don't know what to do with him because I can't drop him and I can't trade him.
He's a free agent right now, isn't he?
I thought he, like, re-signs for, like, a min-contract two-way deal, like, after the fact.
Let me get the updated Puckpedia on Nils. Wait. Lundqvist.
Hey, I think, yeah.
Oh, that's why I was having trouble. Okay. Yeah, he has 1.25 mil. It's for one more year. Okay, so and then he'll be RFA. Maybe there's something there. What do you think about Owen Power? Now we're veering totally off track. But you mentioned you drafted Power. Like he fell like pretty far because he's over 100 games. So he like was in our pro draft and he fell pretty far for like a first overall pick. But he's like hasn't contributed in fantasy yet, and he's got a crazy contract. So it's kind of like, and he doesn't hit, right? So you were really kind of. And I should mention our categories. I don't know if it's similar to yours. Like we're doing like just 6 skater cats: goals, assists, shots, special teams, hits, and blocks. So like hits is like somewhat significant. So yeah. Anyways, I'm curious, like how highly, like, do you think Power has a breakout coming, or do you think maybe, like, obviously he's behind Dahlin, so but he's also going to be behind Dahlin for a long time, right? They both have long-term contracts. It's not as if this is going to change anytime soon, and it's not like, I know I've seen people like talk about like Thomas Harley over in Dallas, and I think Harley has a better chance of overtaking Heiskanen versus Power overtaking Dahlin, but maybe that's the same. But anyways, I'm curious. Anyways, let you answer the question. Owen Power, you have him in this draft or in this league. How are you feeling about having him right now with that big salary?
Well, so my league isn't a cap one. In a cap one,
okay.
that salary hurts, especially with the production he's giving you. One thing with Power, and I don't think he's going to be great in like your type of fantasy format, the 6 category. Honestly, am I crazy for saying I'd rather Bowen Byram in that format as far as a Buffalo defenseman?
I mean, you tell me. Bowen Byram has definitely, he like also has been a little bit disappointing in terms of fantasy, but he's also super young and he's had those concussion issues. But I think he's still produced more than Owen Power did, right? Like Bowen Byram had 24 points in 42 games. The thing is, he hasn't played a full season, so it's really hard to say. But like that point pace is around like a 45-ish point pace for defenseman, which Owen Power has been more like a 30-point guy. So I think, and especially then when you look at the contract, and Bowen Byram has one more year at 3.8 mil, and unless he like really explodes, I don't think he's going to get anything close to the 8.3 that Owen Power is getting. So I guess, but the reason to want Power is he's got a bit of a higher pedigree. Byram had a great pedigree, but and then also I think the injury history with Byram makes him a little concerning.
Yeah, and I think Power's eating a ton of minutes and playing really good hockey. Like he's a fantastic player. I just wonder if Byram's going to sneak into some of those more offensive opportunities kind of how I don't know, like how in St. Louis, how Justin Falk somehow jumps ahead of Colton Parayko for offensive opportunities, even though Parayko's clearly your all-around defender. With Power, the one thing that saves me in the league I'm in, that league it's a points league where the categories are all over the place, which kind of makes it so much fun because I can't spreadsheet the categories. I just have to pick guys I like. We do Fenwick and takeaways and time on ice. Defensemen get more points than forwards and stuff. So it's one of those where I don't even use a spreadsheet for it. I just look at the guys and like, I like this guy, I don't like that guy, and see what happens. So Power's actually decent there because of the play driving and ice time metrics. But in a cap league like yours, I don't know if Power's ever going to pass Dahlin. I think that ship sailed last year or the year before. Dahlin's just so good, more the thing than Power couldn't become like a 50 or 55 point guy.
Yeah, I mean, there have been examples, right? Like Devin Taves was like super productive for a couple seasons in Colorado, maybe still will be. Like he's had, what was his like highest season? Like I'm seeing here, he had 57 points in 66 games back in a shortened season, 2021-22. So like that's a 71 point pace on second power play. So like it's possible, but like Colorado's very different than Buffalo, at least for now. So you could be behind, but like you said, there's also Bowen Byron. But anyways, we're way off track because this is Matchup Maximizer. So I guess let's wrap this up. Did you have any final thoughts about the schedule for next year? Any other factors that people need to consider beyond what we've mentioned? Or at this point, it's just, look at the first week, look at the playoffs, look at the off days over the course of the season, back-to-backs maybe?
Yeah, I think we didn't mention this specifically when looking at the first week. The reason I like to kind of load up my first week is if you have a comfortable lead in the first week going into the weekend, you can use your moves for the second week. Therefore, your second week, you will have an advantage. And if you have your lead going into the weekend again, you can load up for the third week. So especially in less competitive leagues, you can use your last couple draft picks to just snowball your streamers and always have a 5-star advantage on your opponents. And I'd have to pull the numbers again. I did some math on one of my other leagues which has tons of years of data from a number of leagues. And I found that a 1-star advantage gives you like a 55-45% chance of winning the matchup. And I'm not quite sure why that correlates because it doesn't make sense that 1 start in an entire week gives you that much of a difference. But yeah, that was kind of interesting. And I'm like, I'm just going to go quantity over quality for my matchups and my streaming.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And there might be like some correlation causation there. Like maybe the type of player that is maximizing their week is also like just like a better player. Like maybe they're also making better ads and I don't know, like more attentive. So
That's
it
a
could
good
be
point.
something like that.
I never thought of that.
I guess I will say a counterpoint to like, your whole strategy said you load up the first week in the draft because then, you're set up for, then you don't have to use your moves for the first week. You can use those for the second week. And like, I guess I'll just say that you could also like just lose the first week and do the same thing, right? Like if you have players you like in the draft that don't have a good first week schedule, you can just like take the players, like let's say you're in the last round. I'm not saying I would do this. I'm just throwing out another way to think about it. Let's say Zach Benson is still out there, whoever, last year it was Zach Benson that everyone was losing their mind over at the end of the draft. So you're like, should I take, this year actually Benson might be good because Buffalo has those 2 games to start the week. But, like let's say there's a guy like that doesn't have a good schedule in the first week. You could also just think of it like, let me just take all the like sleepers that I think have a chance to be awesome. I'm not even going to stress about the first week. I'm going to use all my ads for the first, because don't forget also in the first couple weeks of the fantasy season, that's where there's guys who weren't drafted that are starting to break out, that it's like they're going to get added in that week and then be held all season. Like there's going to be some players that come out of nowhere and just become like awesome. And so that's your chance also to get these guys. So you could also just think of it, like forget the first week. I'll be fine. It's like a 20-week season. If I lose, I lose. I'm going to use the draft and the first week of 4 ads just to load up on as many like good players as I can, and then like sort of start maximizing the schedule maybe the following week. So it's a balance, right? It really depends like how awesome these players are that you're, passing on to get the good streaming players. And obviously, Jeremy, it's worked for you to just focus on the quantity because you're going to tier 1 next year, and I think I'd imagine you're one of the favorites. depending how the auction goes.
I'm not sure I'd go that far. There's a lot of people with more experience in Tier 1 that have managed to stay there for many years. Obviously, I think Ryan's the favorite. Two wins in a row is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, no, Ryan is he is the best fantasy player maybe I've ever seen. But it'll be fun to see if he can do 3 in a row. But okay, so thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. Not impromptu, but, Jeremy and I kind of scheduled this a little bit last minute, and I think that it's been a lot of fun talking with you and like looking at the schedules. It's good to like have it in the back of our minds. You can come back, listen to this episode again later, or we'll share the show notes with the patrons. Obviously, if you're not a patron, Keeping Karlsson, no time like the present. We still have our summer promotion going on, so just $1. Come on in, join our community. We're having fun. We're doing mock drafts. We're doing rankings. We'll post the show notes. You can register for the Cupful. And before you know it, it's going to be time to start preparing for the Cupful. Registration deadline will be around the start of September, and then we'll start filling the leagues. You'll get your invite. Get ready for your slow draft. It's going to be a blast. So keepingkarlsson.com/patron for that. Thanks again, Jeremy. I guess we'll be hearing from you maybe on our as the peanut gallery when Brian and I talk about our dynasty draft, and then definitely once short shifts comes where Jeremy and Lewis and Shams and sometimes Derek, a pair of them team up a couple times a week during the regular season, during the week, just to give you a quick show update on what's been going on in between Brian and I mega shows on Sunday. So yeah, it's all going to be happening. So just make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson, and you'll get everything we could come up with and throw up on the feed. So thanks again, Jeremy. Thanks again, everyone. Good luck with your last month of maybe not being obsessed too much with hockey, though. Maybe if you're like me, you already are, because it's a year-long thing, not just during the season. See ya.